When it comes to photography, we always inevitably come face to face with the age-old question. If you could only have one lens for the rest of your life, what would it be? You need something that is versatile, something that can handle any situation you throw at it. Landscapes? Check. Portraits? Nailed it. Weddings? All day long. Commercial, editorial, fine art. This lens devours light and sends razor-sharp images to your camera's sensor with every single shutter actuation. It does everything you need it to do with an unlimited supply of quality, durability, and style. You're about to take the most important picture of your life, and this is the lens you pull out of the bag. When your house is on fire, this is the one thing you run in to save. Okay, scratch that last part. Don't run into a burning house. But definitely get your hands on the Canon 24-70 F2.8 as soon as you can. Deep Dive starts now. This is the Canon 24-70mm F2.8L series lens. Now, over the past 10 years, I have shot 90% of my landscape photography portfolio through this lens. And I can personally attest it is one of the most amazing pieces of optical engineering of all time. This is the one piece of glass that will change your photography forever. So in this deep dive, we're going to explore why this is the one lens you cannot live without. Okay, full transparency, we are talking about the original Canon 24-70 F2.8 Mark II L series lens. We are not talking about the R series lens, which only fits onto the Canon mirrorless cameras. We will get into the R series lenses in another episode. But for now, we're talking about the lens you put onto your DSLR, such as the Canon 5D Mark IV or the 5D SR. Now, if you have a mirrorless camera, such as the Canon R5, you can get an adapter to put this old lens onto your new camera, and everything works just fine. So, if you upgrade your camera body and you don't want to pay thousands of dollars to replace all of your old lenses, thankfully, Canon has you covered, and these old lenses do perform admirably on the new Canon mirrorless cameras. Alright, I think it makes sense to start off by talking price. Suffice it to say, the reason you have not already picked one of these lenses up is that they are very expensive. The 24-70 hovers just below the $2,000 mark, making it a major commitment to your photography budget. Now, if you are having buyer's apprehension, you can take solace in the idea that this lens will be with you for the next 10 years or more. It is a long-term investment that will pay off time and again. My 24-70 started off on the Canon 5D Mark II, and it has stayed with me through the 5D Mark III, the 5D SR, and the 5D Mark IV. Camera bodies will come and go, but good glass tends to last through several generations. And now, let's talk shop. Alright, so is the 24-70 good for landscape photography? Yes, absolutely. As we mentioned earlier, I shoot 90% of my landscape images on this lens. If you can only take one lens into the woods with you, this is definitely the way to go. Now, I know a lot of the landscape photographers tend to gravitate towards the prime lenses, things like the 24mm, the 35mm, the 50mm, and that's great. Prime lenses are great, they're nostalgic, and they're very good at what they do. They're exceptionally sharp and they have good build quality, but at the same time, they're also very inefficient. The 24mm, the 35mm, and the 50mm, this one lens covers that entire range. So why would I put 3 lenses in my bag when all I have to do is put 1 lens in my bag? So an option like this is going to be a lot more efficient, especially if you're doing a lot of hiking, if you have limited space in your bag, if you're traveling. I don't necessarily have the option to take an entire shelf full of lenses with me. So that's why I choose something that offers an enormous amount of versatility like the 24-70. I have shot in virtually every landscape situation that you can imagine. Antelope Canyon, Pacific Northwest, mountains of Colorado, beaches, cityscapes. This lens, it just doesn't let you down. It gobbles up every possible scene that you can think of, and it delivers enormous quality. So if you're worried about, maybe the sharpness versus a prime lens, or maybe the build quality versus a prime lens, don't, because this is going to deliver the ultimate amount of quality that you need, especially in such a compact and versatile package. Now, especially when we combine this with a camera like the ancient Canon 5D SR, the 50 megapixel monster, you're gonna get really, really amazing results. Now, I produce really large format images for high-end clients, hotels, galleries, luxury homes, and this lens definitely delivers all the quality that you could ever need for any large format printing situation, especially when you hook it up to a beast of a camera like the 5D SR. All right, so you are the type of photographer who loves your prime lenses. You love your 50mm, you love your 35mm, you love your 24mm. So is the 24-70, which covers that entire range, is this lens as good or as sharp as each of those lenses at their respective focal lengths? To that, I would say yes and no. I would say with critical sharpness, it is effectively perfectly fine. Again, I've shot all of my landscapes on this lens and I've never been disappointed with the level of sharpness. Now, can you maybe eke a tiny little bit more sharpness out of a premium 50mm lens than you can with this lens at 50mm? Probably just a little bit, but is the average viewer really gonna notice that or even care? Is the average photographer gonna be able to pixel peep every single time and make the distinction between a 50mm prime and a 24-70 shot at 50mm? I doubt it. I doubt it very much. And if you're the type of person who loves to pixel peep, that's great. This lens is also not gonna let you down because, as I keep reiterating, it is razor sharp. And I do not carry a 50, a 24, or a 35 with me ever, anywhere. I only carry this, and I've never been disappointed. So landscape photographers are definitely adorable with their prime lenses. I get it, you're a purist. Zoom with your feet, as they say. If you don't like the composition that you have with the 50mm, well, pick up your tripod and move a little bit closer or a little bit farther away. And that's all well and good until you're at the edge of a lake or a cliff. Maybe you have a 35mm prime on the edge of your camera, and what you really need is a 50 or even a 70mm to get the composition that you want. Well, you're not exactly going to zoom with your feet off the edge of a cliff, are you? No, of course not. That's why having a zoom lens with the capability to change your composition at will right there without moving your feet, not so bad, eh? Is the 24-70 good for portrait photography? I would say yes, absolutely. It is a great lens for portrait photography, especially if you're working with more than one person and you need to, again, bring a lot of variety to the stage. You need to go a little bit wide, maybe you need to go a little bit tighter. It actually has a great amount of range to cover almost any shooting situation that you could think of. Now, when it comes to portraits, I will say that I tend to gravitate towards the beast monster, the 70-200, especially if you're just doing individual portraits of people. I feel like this kind of gives you a little bit more of a magical result. It allows you to really zoom in, contract that depth of field, get that beautiful creamy out of focus background. It's not something that you can 100% accomplish with this 24-70. Now you can, because when you zoom out to 70mm on a lens like this, you are kind of on the verge of a light telephoto lens. And you can stop it down to f2.8 and shoot and get some pretty nice contracted depth of field. I've definitely shot a lot of great portraits with this lens. It has ultimate sharpness and very good focus acquisition. So as far as a portrait lens, yes, it's amazing, but I would probably, again, gravitate toward my 70-200. We're gonna do a whole new review on this Beastmaster as well later on down the line. So be sure to check back for that. While the 24-70 is probably the best lens that you could ever buy, I would say that the 70-200 is my favorite lens to use. So best, favorite, two different things, but we'll talk about that in another lesson. All right, so let's talk wedding photography. Is this a good lens for wedding photography? I would say absolutely. I never shoot a wedding without this lens. This is the primary lens that I leave on my camera the entire time for pretty much all the weddings that I've ever shot. Again, because it has such a versatile range. 24mm is gonna get you probably 95% of the way for most of the wide angle kind of group shots, maybe ceremony sort of stuff if you need to get in close. And then when you zoom out to the 70mm limit of this lens, you have a really nice kind of close contact portrait lens that allows you to get a little bit closer to your subject without physically getting closer to your subject. So that's pretty nice. It also has really, really adequate macro features. So if you need to get up close to the rings or the flowers, you can definitely handle all of that with just this lens. You don't have to go to a special macro lens or put any kind of an adapter on this. It's gonna cover all of your macro needs just fine. Speaking of macro, is the 24-70 good for macro photography? To that, I would say yes. I actually shot an entire flower reflection project on this lens, and it resulted in absolutely beautiful images. I could not have been happier with that. Now, you're not gonna be able to get, you know, super micro close using this lens, but even at that limitation, this lens is actually quite good for macro photography. I've had really great luck with it. I do have a series of other macro lenses that I use, and almost every macro project I do, I end up coming back and hooking this lens onto the camera to shoot the project with this lens in addition to the other macro lenses, because it does give you sort of an overall kind of beautiful middle to wide angle quality for your macro stuff. So definitely it's a great lens for macro photography. Is the 24-70 good for sports photography? Yes, it's good for sports photography, but I think mostly what you'll notice is that any photographer who is out shooting sports, especially something like football, baseball, basketball, they're gonna be running 2 cameras. A lot of photographers will swing something like a 70-200 or even a 300mm onto their primary camera so that they can reach out and get players while they're far away on the field. And then when the players kind of come in for a touchdown or slide into home plate, you're gonna be a little bit closer, and that's when you would whip around and grab this guy for the close-up stuff. So I'm not a sports photographer. I don't do a whole lot of sports. I'm probably not the best person to ask, but I can assure you that most sports photographers do have this lens on their person at all times during every game, because you just never know when the action is gonna come right up close. All right, now let's take a minute to talk quality. Image quality, color tone quality, things like that. Now, there are a lot of photography lenses out there, which in my opinion, they try to accomplish too much. If you have something insane like a 24-300, that lens is not gonna be able to do anything very good at all, because it's just trying to cover too much ground. This lens, on the other hand, 24-70, is just that sweet spot to where this lens can do everything beautifully. 24mm has a very, very sharp sweet spot. 50mm has a very, very sharp sweet spot. And all the way out to 70mm, this lens is just razor sharp throughout its entire range. And that's what you look for in a good zoom lens. You don't want it to be able to do too much. You want it to be able to accomplish exactly what it needs to accomplish within that critical range. 24-70, just for whatever reason, it hits that absolute sweet spot, and every image that you get with this lens is going to be tack razor sharp. So the question of the hour, should you buy the 24-70? Now, I've mentioned it earlier, this is a type of glass that can literally change your photographic life. It will enable you to take on new projects that you never thought possible, and it will give you an enormous amount of diversity right in your bag, all with one lens. If you could only have one lens for the rest of your life, this would probably be the best choice, because it can accomplish so much in such a tiny form factor. Now, if you're the type of person who likes to travel, if you like to hike, if you like to go anywhere where space is a limited option, this is the one lens that you need to have with you. Something like a 70-200 is really, really brilliant at shooting portraits, shooting things that are far away, birds, wildlife, but it's gigantic. You can't really fit this in a small bag and keep it on the go. Plus, it has a little bit of a limited range. You can't shoot a wide angle shot with this. You can't shoot a house or a town. You can, but you just have to be extremely far away. Whereas you can be right in the middle of the action with the 24-70, and it will always give you the right amount of range to cover pretty much any photographic assignment that you could ever want. So if you can only have one lens for the rest of your life, this is definitely the one to have. Now, who is ever gonna have one lens for the rest of their life? Maybe if you're a minimalist, that's cool, I can appreciate that. But I mean, photography is meant to be enjoyed, so by all means, get all the gear that you possibly can. But when you go on your next trip and you have a limited amount of space in your bag, this is likely gonna be the one lens that you take with you. All right, friends, as always, thank you so much for joining us. Now, if you have any cool stories from your 24-70mm lens, be sure to leave them in the comments below. We would love to hear from you. Furthermore, if you're interested in upgrading your photography skills, zip on over to our website, premiumlightacademy.com, and check out some of our premium tutorials. In the meantime, be sure to like and subscribe to this channel. We have a lot of cool new stuff coming up, and I don't want you to miss out. So we'll see you in the next lesson.